Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the console as the alien ship's klaxons blared, red lights pulsing across the bridge like bleeding wounds. The view screen showed the hulking form of the Krell cruiser bearing down, its weapons ports glowing with plasma fire. Her crew, 3 souls in this battered human frigate, snapped to action without hesitation. Lieutenant Marco Reyes, her cautious second-in-command, strapped into the tactical station, fingers flying over the holographic controls. "Shields at 40%, Captain." Their last volley breached the outer hull. "We're venting atmosphere and engineering." His words were clipped, eyes narrowed behind his visor, the weight of their isolation pressing on him like the void outside. From the engineering alcove, Dr. Lena Korsakov cursed under her breath, her wiry frame twisting to reroute power. The brilliant xenobiologist, always witty even in crisis, shot back, "Marco, if you don't stop stating the obvious, I'll vent you next." "Elena, give me 30 seconds. I can jury-rig the fusion core to overload their targeting array." Elena nodded sharply, her brave resolve an anchor in the storm. The Krell Empire had dismissed humanity as lesser beings, primitives unworthy of their vast stellar domain. They'd blockaded Sol's outer colonies, demanding surrender without a fight. But Elena's ship, the USS Resolve, was on a scouting run when the ambush hit. No reinforcements, no escape vector, just grit and ingenuity against a foe that towered in scale. The cruiser fired again, a lance of energy shearing off the Resolve's starboard nacelle. Alarms wailed as inertial dampeners flickered, slamming the crew against their harnesses. "Direct hit," Marco yelled. "Life support failing. We've got 10 minutes before hypoxia sets in." Lena slammed a panel shut, sparks flying from her gloves. "Done. Firing the pulse now." A low hum built in the ship's core, then erupted as an invisible wave lanced toward the enemy vessel. On the view screen, the Krell ship's weapon stuttered, ports flickering dark. Elena seized the moment, punching the thrusters. Evasive pattern Delta. Marco, target their weakened shields with the railguns. The frigate twisted like a cornered predator, human reflexes outpacing the lumbering alien behemoth. Rails thrummed, kinetic slugs hammering into the cruiser's flank, breaching a hangar bay. But triumph soured fast. The Krell ship recovered, its secondary batteries igniting, a torpedo streaked toward them, proximity warning shrieking. "Incoming!" Marco barked. Elena yanked the yoke, but it was too close. The explosion rocked the Resolve, shearing away sensor arrays and leaving them blind in the debris field. Debris pinged off the hull as they drifted, emergency lights casting long shadows. Lena unstrapped, wiping blood from a gash on her forehead. That was too close. Their command structure must be adaptive. Our hack bought us seconds, not minutes. Elena scanned the flickering readouts, her mind racing. The aliens thought humans weak, but weakness was just another word for underestimated. "We adapt too," she said, voice steady. "Marco, plot a course through the asteroid belt. Lena, get me options on that debris. Anything we can weaponize." Marco's hands trembled slightly as he complied, the cautious pull in him urging retreat, but loyalty held him firm. "Belt's dense, Captain. One wrong turn and we're scrap." "Better scrap than surrender," Elena replied, eyes fixed on the pursuing shadow. The Krell cruiser loomed, its transmissions mocking. Lesser beings yield or perish. As the Resolve slipped into the belt's jagged embrace, Elena felt the first true weight of command. Not fear, but the fire to prove them wrong. The alarms wailed as the first asteroid clipped the Resolve's flank, sending a shudder through the hull that rattled Elena's teeth. She gripped the command console, eyes locked on the holographic display where jagged rocks tumbled in lazy lethal orbits. "Status, Marco." "How's our trajectory holding?" Marco's fingers flew across his panel, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "Holding barely. That hit scraped our shields down to 60%. Next one like it and we're venting atmosphere." His voice carried that familiar caution, the kind that had saved them from bad jumps before, but now it edged toward panic. He glanced at her, dark eyes pleading for sense. "Captain, we could loop back out. The belt's no place for a freighter like ours." Elena shook her head, her jaw set. No retreat. Not with the Krell cruiser dogging their exhaust trail, its sleek form cutting through the void like a predator scenting blood. The alien's last broadcast still echoed in her comms log. "Lesser beings, your primitives end here." She'd broadcast her own reply, terse and defiant. "Watch us." Now, Action had to match words. Lena, talk to me. What's salvageable in that debris field ahead? From the engineering station, Lena leaned into her headset, her wiry frame coiled like a spring. The mechanic's wit usually lightened the bridge, but tension sharpened her tone now. Debris from that old mining op cap. Plenty of iron nickel chunks we could magnetize and sling as countermeasures. But it'll take power we don't have if we're dodging rocks. She paused, screens flickering under her gaze. Give me 2 minutes to reroute auxiliaries and I can rig a launcher from the cargo bay grapples. Make it 1, Elena ordered, her mind mapping the belt's chaos. The Resolve wasn't built for this. A battered hauler meant for colony runs, not evading alien enforcers. But humans didn't yield to sneers from silicon-skinned overlords who dismissed Earth as a backwater rock. The fire in her chest burned hotter. This was their shot to turn the hunt around. Marco's console beeped urgently. Incoming! Cluster at Mark 047, too dense to weave. Elena slammed the evasion thrusters, the ship lurching as inertia fought her command. Rocks the size of shuttles hurtled past, one grazing the viewport with a screech of a bladed hull. The bridge lights dimmed briefly, power fluctuations rippling through the deck. Lena, now. Done! Lena barked, her hands a blur. Launching first batch, aiming to clog their sensors. From the external cams, Elena watched the improvised barrage. Fist-sized ore fragments, magnetized and flung on trajectories to intersect the cruiser's path. They weren't weapons, not really. Just clutter to blind the aliens' advanced scanners. The Krell ship veered, its energy lances firing wildly into the debris, illuminating the belt in staccato bursts of plasma. A cheer almost escaped Elena's lips, but Marco's shout cut it short. They're adapting, scanning through it already. And we've got a hull breach in Bay 3. Pressure dropping fast. The cost hit like a gut punch. Bay 3 held their emergency stores. Rations, medkits, the spare parts that could mean life or death if they made it out. Elena's grip tightened, knuckles white. Seal it off. Lena, patch what you can from here. On it, Lena replied, already diving into the schematics. But her voice held a rare hitch. Cap that breach. It's venting our atmo-recyclers. We lose more and breathable air becomes a timer. The weight settled heavier now. Command's fire tempered by the grind of reality. Elena plotted the next dodge, the belt shadow swallowing the Resolve whole. They were buying time, but time was a thief in the dark. Lena's fingers flew across the console, rerouting auxiliary power to the failing seals. Sparks danced from the edges of the bulkhead display. A frantic Morse code of the ship's agony. The Resolve groaned under another near miss. The asteroid belt's debris pinging off the hull like vengeful hail. Recyclers at 42%, Lena reported, her voice steady but edged with the strain of holding back panic. She wiped sweat from her brow, the cockpit's red emergency lights casting harsh shadows on her focused face. I can stabilize for another hour, maybe 2 if we cut non-essentials. But cap the aliens, they're closing the net. Sensors picking up 3 signatures vectoring from the outer ring. Elena nodded, eyes locked on the holographic nav chart. The belt was their only shield now. A chaotic maze of rock and void where the Xenofleet thought humans couldn't survive. They'd called them lesser beings, primitive scavengers unworthy of the stars. But lesser beings didn't improvise like this. Engines hot, Marco. Countermeasures status? From the engineering alcove, Lena grunted over the intercom, her wiry frame bent over a jury-rigged panel. Tools clattered as she fused a makeshift baffle into the exhaust vents. Flares ready, but our decoys are down to scraps. 1 good burst left, make it count. She was the cautious one, always double-checking welds, but even she moved with the grit of someone who'd patched hulls mid-firefight before. The ship lurched as Elena banked hard, threading between 2 tumbling boulders the size of shuttles. Alarms blared, a proximity warning from the lead alien pursuer, its sleek form slicing through the debris like a predator through mist. Scans showed energy signatures building. They were charging weapons, elegant plasma lances that could vaporize a corvette in seconds. They're adapting, Elena muttered, echoing Lena's earlier warning. The Xenos had underestimated the Resolve at first, dismissing the battered human freighter as easy prey after the skirmish at Epsilon Verge. But now, their formations tightened, probes fanning out to predict the erratic path. 1 wrong twist and the belt's gravity wells would crush them as surely as the enemy. Lena slammed a fist on the armrest. Incoming scan, deep probe. They're mapping our weak points. Her wit surfaced in the tension, a dry edge to her words. Great. Now they know we skipped the last maintenance cycle. Elena ignored the jab, her brave resolve fueling the dodge. Deploy the burst.
Lena, now!
A shudder ran through the deck as the last decoy launched, a cloud of metallic chaff blooming behind them, laced with false heat signatures. It mimicked the Resolve's profile, splitting the enemy's fire. The lead ship veered, its lances grazing a distant asteroid instead, shattering it into glittering shards that peppered the void. But victory tasted like ash. The maneuver cost them momentum. The Resolve's engines whined, overtaxed from the constant evasion. Lena's console flickered, recyclers dipping to 38%. Air grew thicker, each breath carrying the faint metallic tang of failing filters. They're splitting up, Lena called, her voice tight, flanking from port and starboard. We can't outrun this forever. Elena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their situation. The aliens' tech was superior. Their ships built for open warfare, not this gritty scramble. But humans? They turned scraps into salvation. Her gaze snagged on the nav chart's anomaly, a dense cluster of micro-asteroids ahead, a natural grinder that even xenosensors might misread. New plan, she said, voice cutting through the din. We dive into the grinder. Full burn. Lena's eyes widened. Cap, that's suicide. The turbulence alone. Or we die out here playing tag. Elena's grip on the controls was iron. Trust the ship. Trust us. Lena patched in, hesitation gone. Rerouting power to shields. Make it quick. The Resolve surged forward, engines roaring defiance. The grinder loomed, a swirling vortex of pebble-sized rocks accelerated by magnetic eddies, lethal to anything not nimble. The aliens hesitated, their probes recoiling from the chaos. One pursuer fired blindly, but the shot diffused in the debris storm. Inside, the ship bucked like a wild thing. Straps bit into shoulders. Loose panels rattled. Lena braced, calling out adjustments. Shields holding barely. Port thruster at 70%. A jolt hit, the hull screeching as a rock fragment scored the armor. Elena held course, weaving through the maelstrom with instincts honed from a lifetime of frontier runs. The aliens fell back, their formations fracturing against the unpredictable hazard. They burst free on the far side, the belt's shadows deeper now, a momentary sanctuary. But the cost lingered, a fresh gash in the ventral plating, recyclers wheezing at 32%. Elena exhaled, the cockpit humming with exhausted relief. Not lesser, she whispered to the stars. Not by a long shot. Elena gripped the console, her knuckles whitening as the nav screen flickered back to life. The asteroid belt's edge receded on the rear sensors, but the alien pursuer's signatures blinked insistently. 3 sleek interceptors, closing the gap with predatory precision. Lena, status on that hull breach? She barked, eyes locked on the plotting grid. Bad news, Cap. Lena replied from engineering, her voice tinny over the intercom. Sweat beaded on her forehead under the harsh glow of diagnostic panels. She wiped it away with a grease-streaked forearm. Ventral plating's compromised. Debris punched through like wet paper. Recyclers are coughing up 32%, and if we don't seal it soon, we'll be venting Atmo in the next skirmish. Marco, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, leaned forward, his wiry frame tense. The ex-miner from the outer colonies always carried that quiet grit. The kind forged in zero-G shafts where one wrong drill meant burial in rock. Options, we can't outrun them forever. Those Krell bastards have warp coils that laugh at our sublights. Elena nodded sharply, plotting a vector toward the nearest gas giant, a hazy orange orb that might offer cover in its rings. The ship Resolve groaned in response, her engines straining against the patchwork repairs from their last desperate jump. Humans had built her tough, but the Krell's tech treated hulls like toys. We improvise. Lena, can you reroute power to the auxiliary seals? Flood the breach with that emergency foam. It's not pretty, but it'll hold. Lena snorted, already yanking conduits free with a multi-tool clenched in her teeth. Foam's rated for micrometeors, not whatever hit us. But hell, it's better than sucking vacuum. Give me 10 minutes, Marco. If you can juice the stabilizers from up there, I'll kiss you when this is over. He chuckled dryly, fingers flying over the controls. Save the affection. Just keep us flying. The Resolve shuddered as he balanced the thrusters, buying them seconds against the Krell's tightening noose. Elena watched the scopes. The aliens' formation was textbook, flanking maneuvers, energy lances charging for a synchronized strike. They'd dismissed humans as primitives, lesser beings unfit for the stars, but here they were, dancing on the edge of extinction together. A proximity alarm wailed. The lead interceptor fired a probing shot, a lance of plasma that skimmed their shields and lit the cockpit in crimson. Elena banked hard, the G-forces pinning them to their seats. They're testing us. Lena, hurry! Almost rerouting now. Sparks flew as Lena slammed a panel shut. The ship lurched, a hiss echoing through the vents as foam expanded into the breach, hardening like concrete born of desperation. But the recyclers hit critical, alarms blaring a red line warning. Life support dipping, oxygen reserves bleeding faster than projected. Marco cursed under his breath. We sealed it, but at what cost? Atmos down to 78%. One more hit and we're done. Elena set her jaw, eyes narrowing on the gas giant swelling ahead. The rings glittered like a deadly halo, laced with ice shards that could shred anything foolish enough to plunge in. The Krell wouldn't follow, not with their pristine hulls too precious for such risks. But for the Resolve it was a gamble. Navigate the maelstrom, lose the tail, or die trying. Strap in tight, she ordered, voice steady as steel. We're going through. The engines roared to full, propelling them into the ring's outer fringes. Chunks of frozen ammonia tumbled past, pinging off the reinforced viewports. Marco adjusted inertial dampeners on the fly, his hands a blur. Lena patched in from below, her updates clipped. Shields at 45%. Picking up turbulence, brace. The first real impact came like a hammer blow, a ring fragment glancing the bow. Alarms shrieked. Lights dimmed as power diverted. Elena weaved instinctively, drawing on runs through the belt's worst storms where survival meant feeling the ship's pulse. The Krell signatures hesitated on the scopes, their commander likely recalculating the folly of pursuit. But one interceptor pressed on, arrogant or desperate, its lances cutting through the haze. A direct hit rocked them, shearing a stabilizer fin. Marco grunted, wrestling the controls as the Resolve spun wildly. Lost lateral. We're drifting into the dense pack. Lena's voice cut through the chaos. Cap, vent the auxiliary tanks. Use the exhaust to push us clear. It's risky, but it'll give Marco a boost. Elena didn't hesitate. Do it. Valves hissed open, a plume of propellant blasting sideways, countering their spin just enough. The ship stabilized, scraping free of a massive ice boulder by inches. The pursuing Krell vessel wasn't so lucky. A shard pierced its flank, blooming into a silent fireball that faded in the vacuum. They cleared the ring's heart, emerging on the giant's far side with the Resolve limping but intact. Scanners showed the remaining aliens holding back, wary now. Elena eased off the throttles, the cockpit falling quiet save for the hum of strained systems. Marco slumped back, exhaling. That was too close. They think we're lesser? After that? Lena patched in, her tone laced with weary triumph. Dust to them now, maybe, but we're still breathing. Elena glanced at the stars, the gas giant's curve a scarred witness below. The chase wasn't over. The Krell would regroup. But for the moment, human grit had carved a path. Elena gripped the armrests as the Resolve shuddered through another micro-adjustment, the ship's inertial dampeners straining against the pull of the gas giant's gravity well. Scanners pinged erratically, painting a fractured picture of the Krell flotilla regrouping on the far side of the rings. 3 sleek hunters circling like sharks, their energy signatures flaring as they recalibrated weapons. Marco leaned over the console, his fingers dancing across the auxiliary controls, rerouting power from non-essentials to the battered engines. We can't outrun them forever, he said, voice steady but edged with the fatigue of hours at red line. That stunt bought us time, but their sensors will punch through the debris cloud soon. Lena, what's the damage report looking like? From the engineering bay. Lena's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with the grit of someone elbow-deep in sparking conduits. Engines are at 60%. Hull integrity holding, but we've got microfractures in the forward shielding. One more hit like that last one and we're venting Atmo. I can patch the worst of it if we drop to idle for 10 minutes. Elena shook her head, eyes locked on the holographic display where the Krell signatures blinked closer. Idle wasn't an option. The aliens' arrogance had cracked, but their pursuit burned hotter for it. No downtime. Keep her limping, Lena. Marco, plot a slingshot trajectory around the giant's equator. Use the magnetic field to mask our emissions, might buy us another hour. Marco nodded, his cautious nature yielding to the necessity of bold moves. He wasn't the type to charge in blindly, but space had a way of forging resolve from reluctance. The nav computer hummed, projecting a curving path that skimmed the upper atmosphere, where storms of ionized gas could scramble enemy locks. It's risky. The turbulence down there will shake us like a maraca. But yeah, it could work. Punch it. She did, throttles forward in a surge that pressed them back into their seats. The resolve dove rings fading astern as the gas giant swelled to dominate the viewport. A swirling behemoth of amber clouds laced with lightning veins. Alarms wailed softly, warning of atmospheric shear, but Elena tuned them out, her brave streak shining through in the unyielding set of her jaw. Halfway into the curve, the first Krell ship broke through, its beam lancing out like a predator's claw. It grazed the shields, sending sparks across the cockpit panels. Marco cursed, slamming a fist on the console. They're adapting, jamming our decoys. Lena, any tricks left in the arsenal? Working on it, Lena replied, her words punctuated by the clang of tools. She was the witty one, quick with a quip even under fire, but now her tone carried real strain, rerouting auxiliary power to a flare burst. Give me 30 seconds. The ship bucked as they skimmed the cloud tops, turbulence rattling loose bolts. Elena wrestled the controls, sweat beading on her brow while Marco monitored the pursuers. Two more closing the gap, their formations tightening. The Krell had dismissed humans as lesser, primitives fumbling in the void. But this chase was rewriting that script in plasma and steel. Lena's voice cut in sharp. Flare away, now veer starboard. Elena yanked the stick, and the resolve rolled, ejecting an improvised burst of ionized particles that bloomed into a false heat signature. The lead Krell fired into the ghost, its shot dissipating harmlessly in the storm. For a heartbeat, the pressure eased. The aliens hesitated, scanners confused by the magnetic interference, but victory soured fast. A secondary alarm blared, structural failure in the aft section. Lena's shout followed, breach! Debris from the rings must have lodged, sealing bulkheads, but were losing pressure in cargo hold 3. Marco unstrapped, grabbing a repair kit. On my way. Helena, hold course. She nodded, alone now at the helm, the cockpit's hum a lonely companion. The gas giant's storms raged below, a cauldron that mirrored the turmoil inside her. Humans weren't built for this endless grind, but they'd adapt or die trying. The Krell signatures flickered, pulling back slightly, wary of the unpredictable human maneuvers. By the time Marco returned, sweat-soaked and grim, the slingshot had flung them clear, emerging on the giant's night side with velocity to spare. Breach patched, he reported, collapsing into his seat. But we lost half the spare oxy tanks. Stakes just went up. Lena patched through, her relief palpable. Engines stabilizing. We're ghosts for now, but they won't stay fooled long. Elena scanned the stars ahead, plotting the next jump. The Krell thought them dust. Today they'd proven otherwise. But tomorrow's survival demanded more than grit. It required cunning they hadn't yet tapped. Elena gripped the console as the ship's alarms blared a staccato rhythm, the hull groaning under the strain of their improvised slingshot escape. Stars streaked past the viewport, a blur of cold fire that mocked their fragile momentum. Marco slumped in his harness, wiping grime from his face, his breath ragged from the repair sprint. Oxy's tight now, 48 hours if we're lucky. No room for detours. Lena's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering, sharp with forced calm, pushing thrusters to max. But the Krell's sensor net is closing in. They're not buying our ghost act. She paused, the hum of straining engines filling the silence. We need that next jump point, Elena. Coordinates locked? Elena nodded to the empty bridge, her fingers dancing across the nav display. The holographic starfield spun, pinpointing a rogue asteroid cluster ahead. Dense enough to hide in, volatile enough to mask their trail. But the Krell cruisers loomed on the rear sensors, their signatures like predators circling wounded prey. Humans weren't the first species the Krell had dismissed as primitives, but they might be the last to surprise them. Jump in 3. Marco, strap in tight, this one's gonna rattle your teeth. The ship lurched as auxiliary boosters fired, slinging them toward the asteroids. Debris pinged off the shields, each impact a reminder of their dwindling resources. Marco clenched his jaw, eyes on the oxy readouts. He'd seen crews crack under less. Back on the colony runs, one breach had cost him a partner, left him patching hulls alone in the void. Not again. If we thread this needle wrong, we're shrapnel. What's the play if they cut us off? Improvise, Elena shot back, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. Cautious by nature, she'd always favored calculated risks over blind charges. But out here, hesitation meant extinction. The asteroid swelled in the viewport, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits, their surfaces pocked with ice that glinted like shattered glass. One wrong vector and they'd smash into oblivion. Lena's update cut through the tension. Shields at 70%. Krell signatures, 2 cruisers flanking our path. They're probing with drones. A muffled curse followed, then the screech of metal as she rerouted power. I can spoof their scans for another minute, but it'll fry the secondary arrays. Your call. Elena weighed it, the ship's vibration thrumming through her bones. Spoof and risk blindness, or charge blind and invite fire. The Krell's arrogance was their edge. Vast ships, godlike tech, but predictable like overlords swatting flies. Humans, they turned scraps into weapons. Do it. Marco, prep the decoys. We launch 'em on my mark. He unstrapped, moving with the grim efficiency of someone who'd jury-rigged escapes before. In the dim cargo bay light, he hauled the makeshift pods, old fuel cells packed with scrap and signal jammers wired to mimic life signs. His hands, calloused from years in the black, steadied the connections. Decoys away in 10. If this works, we owe Lena a round on Terra, assuming we get back. The ship shuddered as the first drone salvo lit the sensors, Krell weapons tasting the void. Elena's heart pounded, but she kept her eyes on the nav. The asteroid field enveloped them, shadows swallowing the hull. Spoof now. Lena's confirmation beeped, and the decoys erupted from the bays, streaking out like false flares. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, then chaos. Krell fire bloomed on the screens, tearing into the decoys, the explosions painting the rocks in fleeting orange. But one cruiser adjusted, its beam slicing perilously close, shearing off a solar panel in a spray of sparks. Alarms wailed anew, red lights flooding the bridge. Panel's gone, power dipping, Marco barked, scrambling back to his station. The ship yawed, caught in the debris wake, oxygen feeds hissing warnings. Elena wrestled the controls, veering into a narrow gap between tumbling boulders. The maneuver bought seconds, but the cost hit hard. Lena's voice strained over the comm. Engineering's venting, sealing it, but we're down another tank. 36 hours, tops. They cleared the field, engines coughing as they hit open space, the Krell signatures faltering in confusion. Elena plotted the emergency burn, her mind racing ahead to the next hide. A gas giant's rings, perhaps, where human grit could forge another edge. The aliens had called them lesser. In the dust of their own traps, they'd learn the weight of that mistake. But survival's math never lied. Every dodge carved deeper into their margin, turning cunning into desperation. Elena gripped the armrests as the ship shuddered into the gas giant's shadow, the rings looming like a fractured halo against the planet's swirling storms. Alarms blipped faintly now, subdued by Lena's jury-rigged patches, but the fuel gauges hovered in the red. Another burn like that, and they'd be adrift. Rings in 5, she announced, voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. We'll skim the outer edge, use the debris for cover. Krell scanners hate the interference. From the co-pilot's seat, Marco scanned the sensor readouts, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm on the console. The wiry navigator had been quiet since the asteroid dodge, his usual banter replaced by grim focus. Signatures fading behind us, he said, not looking up, but they're adapting. That last volley was tighter, almost predictive. He glanced at Elena, his eyes sharp under the cockpit's dim glow. We thread this needle wrong and we're confetti. Lena's voice crackled from engineering, laced with the hum of straining vents. Confetti's optimistic. I'm rerouting power to shields, but don't ask for miracles. Hull integrity's at 60%, any more micrometeors and we'll spring leaks like a sieve. She paused, the sound of clanging tools punctuating her words. Patching what I can from here, but if we need to EVA, it's on you two. The ship plunged into the ring's outer fringe, icy particles rattling against the hull like hail on tin. Elena eased the throttle, weaving through the denser clusters where water ice and rock fragments spun in lazy orbits. The viewscreen filled with a glittering cascade, each shard catching the distant sun's light in fleeting prisms. But beauty was a luxury. The Krell pursuit drones would be here soon, their superior drives cutting through the void like knives. Contact, Marco barked, pointing to a blip on the long-range array. 3 signatures closing fast. They're not buying the scatter. Must have locked our ion trail. He swiveled to Elena. Options? Punch through to the inner bands or hug the outer and pray. Elena bit her lip, calculating vectors in her head. The inner rings were thicker, a natural shield, but the turbulence could shred them. Outer edge meant exposure, but maneuverability. Outer, she decided, banking hard left. The ship groaned, inertial dampeners lagging as they skimmed a boulder the size of a shuttle. "Lena, can you spoof our signature? Make us look like debris?" A beat of static, then Lena's reply edged with strain. "Working on it. Got some old mining beacons in the database. I'll pulse them like decoys. Give me 2 minutes." Tools scraped again, and Elena imagined her down there, grease-streaked and unyielding. The third member of their ragged crew who'd refused evacuation when the Krell first struck the colony. The first drone appeared on sensors, a sleek arrowhead slicing through the particles. It fired a probing scan, the beam glancing off their hull and lighting up the cockpit in blue strobes. Marco cursed under his breath. "That's no probe, it's a lock-on. Evasive." Elena yanked the stick, the ship rolling into a barrel roll that scattered ice in their wake. The drone's shot went wide, vaporizing a chunk of ring into glittering mist, but the other two were vectoring in, their formations tight and relentless. Humans were lesser beings, the Krell broadcasts had sneered. Primitive, emotional, unfit for the stars. Yet here they were, the aliens' vaunted tech straining against scavenged human grit. "Decoys away," Lena announced, and suddenly the sensors bloomed with false echoes. Ghost ships tumbling in the debris. The lead drone hesitated, veering toward one, its weapons charging futilely. Elena pressed the advantage, diving deeper into the ring's haze where visibility dropped to meters. But the ploy bought only moments. The second drone adjusted, firing blind into the cloud. A hit rocked them, sparks erupting from a panel near Marco. He slapped it down, smoke curling from his sleeve. "Shields at 40. We're taking hits, reroute auxiliary." Elena nodded, her hands a blur on the controls. The gas giant's gravity tugged at them now, pulling the ship toward a swirling eddy of particles. "Lena, we need thrust, now!" No response at first, just the whine of overtaxed engines. Then a surge, rough and uneven, like the ship coughing to life. "I'm inverting the waste recyclers," Lena grunted over comms. "Not pretty, but it'll give us a boost. Hold on, it's gonna stink in here." The makeshift burn propelled them out of the kill zone, the drones scattering in the sudden acceleration. Elena plotted a slingshot around a larger fragment, using its mass to mask their escape. Marco monitored the feeds, his burn-damaged arm trembling but steady. "They're breaking off, regrouping for another pass. We bought time, but fuel's critical. What's the play?" In the respite, Elena's mind raced. The rings offered hiding spots, but they needed more than evasion. A supply cache from the old mining ops, abandoned when the Krell arrived, might be tucked in the inner bands. Risky, but it could mean oxygen, parts, a fighting chance. "We go for the cache," she said, voice firm. "It's our edge." "Lena, you good for a hard dock?" "Affirmative," came the reply, weary but resolute. "Just don't scratch the paint." As they hurtled toward the denser rings, the Krell drones reformed in the distance, their lights piercing the haze like predators' eyes. The humans had turned dust into defiance, but the cost mounted. Another scar on the hull, another tally on their dwindling reserves. Survival wasn't won in grand charges. It was carved in these desperate improvisations, one gritty step from the brink. The shuttle shuddered as Lena punched the thrusters, weaving through a gauntlet of tumbling ice boulders that spun lazily in the ring's shadow. Captain Elena gripped the co-pilot's console, her knuckles white against the worn alloy, eyes locked on the scanner's faint blip. The cache's signature, buried in the debris like a forgotten bone. "Keep her steady," she murmured, though her voice carried the edge of a command. The Krell drones were closing, their sensor pings echoing through the comms like distant thunder. Lena's hands danced over the controls, sweat beading on her forehead under the dim cockpit lights. "They're flanking us, 2 on starboard, gaining fast." She banked hard, the inertial dampeners whining in protest, and a chunk of regolith clipped the wing, sending sparks across the viewport. Elena felt the jolt in her teeth, tasting the metallic tang of recycled air gone stale. They'd patched the hull twice already today. One more hit like that, and they'd be venting atmosphere. "Divert power to shields," Elena ordered, her mind racing through the schematics she'd memorized from the old mining logs. The cache wasn't just supplies. It was their lifeline, packed with O2 scrubbers and fusion cells that could turn this rust bucket into a proper fighter. But the inner bands were a meat grinder, gravitational eddies that could shear a ship in half if you misjudged the pull. "Mark that debris cluster at bearing 240. Use it for cover." "Aye, Cap." Lena's response was clipped, her usual wit dulled by fatigue, but she executed the maneuver with the precision of someone who'd cheated death one too many times. The shuttle dove into the cluster, fragments rattling against the hull like hail on a tin roof. On the rear scopes, the drones hesitated, their formation breaking as they recalibrated for the clutter. Elena allowed herself a thin smile. Humans didn't have their tech, but they had the stubborn knack for turning chaos into an ally. Deeper, in the rings thickened, a swirling soup of particles that blurred the stars. Alarms blared. A proximity warning as a massive ice slab loomed ahead, its surface etched with craters from ancient impacts. "Evasive!" Elena shouted, but Lena was already on it, rolling the shuttle under the slab's belly. The move bought them seconds, but not enough. A drone burst through the haze, its energy lance grazing the tail, melting a stripe of armor plating. "Shields at 40%, Lena reported, her voice tight. "We're leaking, pressure dropping in the aft bay." Elena unstrapped, grabbing the emergency kit from its wall mount. No time for niceties. She sealed the breach herself, foam sealant hissing out as she wrestled the patch into place. The cold seeped through her suit, a reminder of how thin the margin was. Back in the cockpit, she saw the cache beacon pulsing stronger now, half buried in a crevasse of frozen silicate. "Dock us hard," Elena said, strapping in again. "I'll suit up and grab what we can. 5 minutes tops." Lena nodded, her face pale but set. "Make it 3. Those bugs aren't done with us." The shuttle clamped onto the cache pod with a metallic crunch, magnetic locks engaging amid the ring's relentless drift. Elena cycled the airlock, the outer door grinding open to reveal the void, specks of dust glittering like stars in the floodlights. She propelled herself across the short gap, mag boots thudding against the pod's weathered hull. Drills and jacks from the mining era still clung to its side, relics of humans who'd toiled here before the Krell claimed the system. Inside, the cache was a treasure trove. Crates stamped with faded UN logos holding batteries, medkits, even a crate of hydroponic seeds. Useless now, but a spark of home. Elena prioritized ruthlessly, hauling a fusion cell first, its weight straining her harness. A shadow flickered on her helmet display. The drones, circling like vultures. One fired, the beam slicing past the pod and vaporizing a nearby boulder in a flash of superheated steam. She tethered the cell to her line and kicked off, heart pounding as she reeled back toward the shuttle. Lena's voice crackled over the comm. "They're locking weapons. Get inside." Elena dove through the airlock just as the pod erupted in a secondary blast, shrapnel pinging off the shuttle's hull. The inner door sealed with a hiss and she collapsed in the lock, chest heaving. Lena had the ship moving before Elena could catch her breath, peeling away from the exploding cache. "Got the cell?" she asked, not looking back, fingers flying to reroute power. "Yeah," Elena gasped, securing the prize. "Enough to juice the railgun, but we lost the rest. Krell got greedy." The drones pursued, their lights cutting through the dust. Lena vented a plasma burst from the maneuvering thrusters, improvising. A smokescreen that fouled their sensors for precious moments. Elena slotted the cell into place, the hum of reviving systems like music. "Arm the gun," she said, targeting the lead drone. The railgun thrummed, spitting a slug that punched through the alien craft, turning it to glittering debris. One down. But the others adapted, splitting to encircle them. Elena felt the weight of it. The cache was gone, their reserves thinner, but that single cell burned bright in the console. "We've got bite now," she told Lena. "Let's make 'em regret waking the neighborhood." As they twisted through the rings, firing on the run, the shuttle felt less like a coffin and more like a weapon forged in desperation. The Krell thought humans frail. Today, they'd learn about the fire in fragile things. The shuttle bucked, hard as another drone's plasma bolt grazed the hull, sending sparks dancing across the viewport. Elena gripped the controls, yanking them into a barrel roll that clipped a fragment of the rings, the icy debris rattling like hail against the shields. Lena's fingers flew over the auxiliary panel, rerouting power from life support to the railgun's capacitors. "Shields at 30%, she barked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. "One more hit like that and we're venting Atmo." "Keep it together," Elena replied, eyes locked on the tactical display. The remaining drones, 4, now sleek and predatory, flanked them like wolves herding prey. The Krell pilots were learning, adjusting their formation to predict the shuttle's erratic path through the ring's gravitational eddies. No more easy shots. Elena fired a burst from the maneuvering thrusters, slinging the craft toward a dense cluster of boulders floating in the ice. On my mark, jam their comms with that EMP burst we jury-rigged. Lena nodded, her cautious nature yielding to the fire in Elena's plan. She'd always been the one to double-check seals and run sims twice, but out here, with the cache of power, cells lost to the earlier ambush and their oxygen ticking down, hesitation was a luxury they couldn't afford. The shuttle shuddered as it weaved between the rocks, the drones closing in. One peeled off, diving low to cut them off. Elena marked it. Now. The EMP pulse erupted from the modified cargo bay emitter, a silent wave that rippled through the void. The lead drone faltered, its thrusters stuttering as onboard systems fried. It spun wildly, smashing into a ring particle and erupting in a brief fireball that lit the shadows. 3 left. But the victory was short-lived. The other drones adapted, faster than expected, their hulls shimmering with some kind of adaptive shielding that shrugged off the pulse's edge effects. One fired a tracking missile, its contrail glowing against the faint light of the gas giant below. Alarms blared, red lights flooding the cabin. "Evasive!" Elena shouted, slamming the throttle forward. The shuttle lurched, but the missile curved with them, inexorable. Lena's mind raced. Standard countermeasures were depleted, the decoy flares spent in the initial dogfight. She scanned the readouts, spotting the ring's magnetic anomalies. An idea sparked, born of those late-night engineering huddles back on the colony outpost. "Divert to Vector 7-5, she said, her tone shifting from report to command. "The rings have a flux field there. It's weak, but if we polarize the hull..." Elena didn't question it. She punched in the coordinates, the shuttle groaning as it accelerated into the heart of a swirling ice storm. The missile gained, its warhead humming with proximity. Lena flipped switches, channeling the last dregs of the salvaged power cell into the shuttle's electromagnetic plating. The hull hummed, charged like a live wire. The flux field hit them, first a jolt that made Elena's teeth ache, static crawling over her skin. Then the missile struck the polarized field, its guidance going haywire. It veered sharply, detonating against an oncoming boulder fragment in a bloom of fire and shrapnel. Chunks peppered the shuttle's rear, shearing off a stabilizer fin. Alarms wailed anew, but they were through. 2 drones remained, regrouping at a distance. Elena exhaled, tasting blood from a bitten lip. The cockpit smelled of ozone and fear sweat, the air recyclers struggling. That was too close. "What's our status?" Lena pulled up diagnostics, her face illuminated by the flickering console. "Stabilizers compromised, handling's twitchy. Power at critical. And we've got micro-fractures in the aft hull. Patch might hold for another hour, tops." She paused, glancing at the sensor sweep. The drones hovered as if assessing, their signals pinging what was left of the Krell network. "They're calling in reinforcements. We can't outrun them to the relay station." Elena's jaw set, her brave streak igniting. She dragged Lena into this mess, volunteering for the scouting run when the colony needed every hand. But backing down now meant the Krell would glass their outpost unopposed. The humans were lesser beings to them, primitives scrabbling in the dirt of a backwater moon. "Time to prove them wrong. Then we don't run," she said, plotting a course that arced back toward the denser rings. "We lure them in, use the debris as cover. Your flux trick, can we amp it up? Turn the shuttle into a moving trap?" Lena's eyes widened, calculating risks. It was reckless. Overloading the systems could fry the whole ship. But the alternative was drifting dead in space, waiting for the kill shot. She rerouted what she could, the power cell whining in protest. "It'll work. Once, but we'll be blind after. Sensors will flatline." "Good enough." Elena gunned the engines, the shuttle surging forward. The drones took the bait, accelerating to match. As they plunged into the ring's chaos, ice crystals glittering like shattered diamonds in the shuttle's lights, Lena armed the improvised trap. Tension coiled in the cabin, broken only by the rhythmic ping of incoming fire. The first drone committed, swooping in from above. Elena feinted left, then cut hard right. the damaged stabilizers making the maneuver a teeth-rattling fight. Lena triggered the pulse, broader this time, laced with the ring's own magnetic fury. The drone's shields buckled, its frame crumpling as induced currents tore it apart from within. Debris field expanded, a temporary shield, one left. It hung back wary now, but the ping intensified, reinforcements inbound ETA minutes. Elena pushed the shuttle harder, the hull creaking under the strain. "Come on, you bastards," she muttered. Elena gripped the controls, her knuckles white against the worn grips, as the last drone circled like a predator scenting blood. The shuttle shuddered, engines whining against the pull of the ring's debris field. "Lena, status on that pulse mod? We need it now." Lena's fingers flew over the jury-rigged console, sparks dancing from exposed wires. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her voice stayed steady. "Almost. The ring's field is fighting me, it's like wrestling a storm. Give me 10 seconds. The drone dove, lasers slicing through the void. One beam grazed the shuttle's flank, melting a thin line of armor. Alarms blared, red lights pulsing in the cabin. Elena yanked the stick, rolling the craft into a barrel spin that slung loose tools against the bulkhead. 10 seconds? Make it 5! From the jump seat, Marco leaned forward, his engineer's eyes scanning the readouts. "It's adapting, Elena. That thing's AI is learning our patterns. If we don't hit it clean, it'll call in the whole swarm." The ping from the comms escalated, a frantic staccato warning of the incoming reinforcements. Lena slammed the activation key. The shuttle's emitters hummed to life, channeling the ring's magnetic chaos into a focused lance. It lanced out invisible but for the way it warped the ice crystals in its path, turning them to vapor. The drone twisted at the last instant, the pulse shearing off one wing instead of coring it. It spiraled, venting plasma, but stabilized with a burst from auxiliary thrusters. Marco cursed under his breath. "Tough bastard. Shields are modulating, it's countering the frequency." Elena didn't hesitate. She cut power to non-essentials, plunging the cabin into dim emergency glow, and gunned the engines toward the densest part of the debris cloud. Shards of ice and metal pelted the hull like hail, each impact a dull thud that vibrated through their bones. "Hold on, we're going in deep." The drone pursued, but the cloud slowed it, sensors overwhelmed by the metallic soup. Lena patched into the external cams, her face illuminated by the flickering feed. "It's gaining. Wait, there's a gap ahead, a clear lane through the ring's outer edge." Marco shook his head, straps creaking as he shifted. "Too exposed. They'll pick us off." "Not if we use it." Elena's voice sharpened with that human edge, the kind born of too many close calls. She plotted the course on the fly, fingers blurring over the nav panel. The plan formed in fragments. Lure it into the lane, then flip the shuttle's attitude thrusters for a zero-G feint. Risky, but the ring's gravity well could do the rest, slingshot them out while the drone tangled in the pull. The shuttle burst from the cloud, stars wheeling as they entered the lane. The drone locked on immediately, firing a barrage that lit the void in staccato bursts. One shot punched through the rear shielding, alarms shrieking about hull integrity. Air hissed from a micro-breach, cold seeping in. "Lena, seal it," Elena barked, twisting the ship into evasive weaves. Lena was already moving, foam canister in hand, spraying the jagged hole while Marco rerouted power to the failing stabilizers. The drone closed the distance, its form sleek and alien, all curved alloys that screamed superiority, until now. 3, 2. Elena counted, then fired the attitude jets. The shuttle spun violently, inverting their vector. The drone overshot, committed to the chase, and plunged straight into the ring's gravitational shear. Magnetic fields clawed at it. The same fury Lena had weaponized earlier, now amplified by the debris vortex. It fragmented in silence, pieces scattering like confetti against the stars. But the victory tasted bitter. The shuttle listed, one engine coughing smoke, and the comms ping turned to a roar. Reinforcements, a full wing, closing fast. Marco exhaled, wiping blood from a cut on his brow where a panel had clipped him. We bought time, but not much. What's the play now? Elena straightened, eyes fixed on the sensor sweep. The ring loomed, a fractured halo of ice and secrets holding answers to the aliens' downfall if they could just reach it. We finish what we started. Straight into the heart. Lena nodded, resealing the breach with a final spritz of foam. The cabin smelled of ozone and resolve, the three of them bound by the grit that had turned lesser beings into survivors. The engines groaned back to life, propelling them forward into the unknown. The shuttle bucked like a wild thing as it pierced the ring's outer edge, shards of ice the size of fighters shearing past the hull with a screech that set Lena's teeth on edge. She gripped the co-pilot's yoke, fingers white-knuckled while Elena punched overrides into the nav console, sweat beading on her shaved scalp. "Hold her steady, impact in 10. Marco braced against the bulkhead, his rifle slung across his chest, eyes locked on the forward view screen where the alien structure loomed. A colossal spire of crystalline alloy, pulsing with an unnatural blue glow that screamed trap. The reinforcements were closing, their sensor ghosts flickering on the tactical display. But this was it. The heart of the ring where the Xenos had hidden their core directive. The code that branded humanity as disposable pests. If they could crack it, upload the virus Elena had jury-rigged from scavenged data, the whole swarm would unravel. A fragment clipped the wing, jolting them sideways. Alarms wailed. Lena yanked the shuttle into a barrel roll, buying seconds. "Shields at 30%. We can't take another hit like that. Vector us in," Marco barked, already unstrapping to man the turret. "I'll cover the approach. Elena, how long to breach?" 2 minutes if the docking clamps hold." Elena's voice was steady, but her hands flew faster, rerouting power from life support to the forward arrays. The air grew thinner, colder, but none of them flinched. This was human stubbornness at work, pushing when smarter species would bail. The spire rushed up, a jagged monolith etched with alien script that Marco's implant translator fed him in fragmented bursts, warnings, imperatives to submit. He laughed, short and bitter as he swiveled the turret and lit up the nearest pursuer. Plasma bolts streaked out, punching through the lead fighter's canopy in a bloom of fire. One down, but 3 more dove in, their beams raking the shuttle's flank. Lena jinked hard, the G-forces pinning Marco to his seat. "They're coordinating, flanking us low." She glimpsed the ring's interior through the chaos. Vast caverns of frozen methane, laced with web-like conduits that hummed with energy. The Xenos' nerve center, vulnerable if they could just thread the needle. Elena slammed a fist on the console. "Docking initiated, mag locks engaging." The shuttle shuddered as it latched onto the spire's base, hull groaning under the strain. But the reinforcements were on them now, one breaking off to target the clamps. Explosions rocked the frame, sparks flying from panels. "Go, go." Marco was out of the turret, hauling the breach kit toward the airlock. Lena killed the engines, grabbing her sidearm and a satchel of breaching charges. Elena followed, tablet in hand, the virus upload prepped. They cycled the lock in a haze of venting atmosphere, boots hitting the spire's surface amid a storm of ice particulates. The alien hull was smooth, unyielding, but Marco slapped the charge in place, counting down. 3, 2. The blast ripped a hole wide enough for them to scramble through, the vacuum tugging at their suits. Inside, the air was a toxic soup, but their seals held. Dim lights flickered overhead, illuminating corridors that twisted like veins, pulsing with that same blue light. They moved fast, Elena leading with the scanner. Core chambers 200 meters coreward, but patrols, heat signatures closing. Sure enough, skittering sounds echoed from the walls, xenodrones, spindly things with energy lances, emerging from alcoves. Lena dropped the first one with a burst from her pistol, its carapace shattering like glass. "Keep moving." Marco covered their flank, picking off another as it lunged. The corridor narrowed, forcing them single file, the air growing thicker with ozone. Elena glanced back, her face pale in the helmet light. "If we lose the upload now, it's all for nothing. The swarm propagates from here." A drone burst from a side vent, tackling Marco to the deck. He wrestled it, suit tearing at the shoulder, but drove his knife into its core. It spasmed and went still. He pushed up, gasping. "Not today." Blood trickled inside his suit, but he waved them on. They reached the chamber, a vast dome, the core a throbbing orb suspended in webs of cable, humming with data streams that Marco's implant overloaded just looking at. Elena jacked in, fingers dancing over her tablet. "Uploading 40%, hold them off." The reinforcements outside must have breached. The spire trembled, distant booms signaling boarding parties. Drones poured in, a chittering wave. Lena and Marco formed a bottleneck, firing in controlled bursts. She took a graze to the leg, staggering but not falling. "Marco, left." He spun, dropping 2 more. Sweat stung his eyes. Ammo was low. Elena's voice cut through the comms. 70%. It's fighting back, some kind of firewall. A larger drone, a sentinel, lumbered in, its lance charging with a whine. Marco charged it, improvised explosive from the satchel in hand. "Cover me!" He dodged a swipe, slamming the charge onto its underbelly. Lena laid down fire, buying him the throwback. The blast lit the chamber, the sentinel crumpling in flames, but the recoil wave knocked Marco flat, his helmet cracking against the floor. Vision blurred. Elena yelled, "90 done, virus propagating." The core flickered, the blue light stuttering to red. Alarms blared across the spire. The drones, freezing mid-step, then collapsing like puppets with cut strings. Outside, the wing of fighters veered off, engines failing one by one, tumbling into the ring's icy maw. Lena hauled Marco up, his weight heavy against her. "We did it," Marco gasped, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead, mixing with the sweat that stung his eyes. The chamber around them hummed with dying energy, the alien core's red glow pulsing like a faltering heart. Elena slumped against the console, fingers still hovering over the makeshift interface, her breaths ragged but triumphant. Lena tightened, her grip on Marco's arm, scanning the shadows for any lingering threat. The drones lay in twisted heaps, their once gleaming chassis scorched and inert, but the air carried a faint vibration, a distant rumble from the spire's depths. Not out yet. That blast probably woke the whole damn hive. Marco shook his head, vision clearing just enough to see the exit corridor ahead, its walls flickering with emergency strobes. "Virus status, Elena?" "Spreading clean," she replied, wiping grime from her face. "Their network's collapsing, fighters down, shields offline. But the ring's reactors, they're unstable. We trigger the evac now, or we ride this out in pieces." The ground shuddered, a deep groan echoing through the metal as if the station itself protested its betrayal. Marco nodded, adrenaline sharpening his focus despite the throb in his skull. "Grab the data core. Lena, lead point. We move." They burst into the corridor, boots pounding against the grated floor. Alarms wailed in staccato bursts, interspersed with the crackle of failing systems. Lena's rifle swept left and right, her cautious nature yielding to the raw urgency of survival. Every shadow a potential ambush, every hum a prelude to collapse. A secondary drone squad activated halfway down the hall, smaller scouts jerking to life with erratic whirs, their sensors locking on the intruders. "Flankers," Lena barked, dropping to a knee and unleashing a burst that shattered the lead unit's optics. Marco dove behind a bulkhead, slinging his satchel for another charge. His hands, steady despite the pain, wired the device with practiced speed, human grit turning scrap into salvation. "Jam their comms, Elena." She patched into a wall panel, her witty edge surfacing in the chaos. "On it, unless you want an encore of that Sentinel barbecue." A surge of static flooded the air, the drones stuttering, their coordination fracturing like brittle ice. But the corridor buckled under them, a section of floor peeling away to reveal the void below, the ring's icy expanse swirling with debris from the falling fighters. Marco hurled the charge, the explosion ripping through the pack, but the recoil blast hurled him toward the edge. Lena lunged, snagging his harness just as his boots slipped into nothingness. "Hold!" she grunted, muscles straining, the weight pulling her forward inch by inch. Elena scrambled over, looping a cable from her kit around a stanchion, anchoring them both. The trio hauled back, collapsing in a heap as the gap widened behind, swallowing the remnants of the drone wreckage. Panting, they pressed on, the spire's outer hatch hissing open to the shuttle bay. Their ride waited, engines primed, but the bay doors groaned under the station's spasms, jamming halfway as structural failures cascaded. "Manual override," Marco ordered, ignoring the blood now soaking his collar. He climbed the access ladder, tools in teeth, prying at the controls with brute force and a scavenged lever. Sparks flew, the mechanism screeching in defiance, but it gave way just as another tremor rocked the deck. They piled into the shuttle, Elena at the helm, punching coordinates for the jump point. The bay doors sealed behind them with a final, grinding seal, and the craft rocketed free, leaving the alien ring to fracture in their wake, its once mighty spires crumbling into the cosmic dust. As the stars blurred into hyperspace streaks, Marco leaned back, the medpack hissing against his wounds. Lena met his gaze, a rare smile cracking her guarded expression. Elena whooped from the cockpit, the camaraderie binding them tighter than any chain. The aliens had deemed them lesser. Now their empire was less than echoes. They flew on, unbroken,